So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Chartered Institute of Horticulture webinar session. We are competing with the weather today, and I've already told Dimi that he's got a real stiff competition on such a glorious day because lots of people will be out and enjoying their gardens and the local parks. But thanks for joining us, and especially all of you that are logged in outside and sharing your alfresco working environments. It's lovely to see. A little bit of housekeeping. So we are recording today's session. It will be available on the CIH website, hopefully tomorrow, but if not, later next week. I have muted everybody, so if you can keep yourself on mute just to avoid any background noise. We'll take questions at the end. So if you've got a question for Dimi, please either pop it in the chat box as we go along, or make yourself known at the end, and I will invite you to ask your question to him directly. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Dimitrisz Sopisz. Dimi is the Grounds and Garden Supervisor at London Queen Mary University, but he's previously held roles as head gardener at 2 stately homes and at a private school in North London. He's also run his own garden design, build and maintenance business. He studied horticultural sciences at Corvinus University in Budapest, Hungary, graduating with a horticultural engineer degree before relocating to the UK in 2010. Dimi has a passion for the environment, education and for mental health, and believes that all of these are intricately linked. And I'm delighted that he's going to share his experiences of some of those horticultural regenerative practices that he's implemented in his working life with us today. So over to you, Dimi.
Thank you very much, Jason. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining myself and all of us together. This afternoon, I will talk about a perspective on regenerative horticulture practices and how we are using these practices at my workplace. Oops. Yeah. So first of all, let me tell you a bit about myself, the connection, my connection with horticulture and the relationship with nature. I've grown up at the countryside, which had quite a big influence on how I see certain things in life. We were pretty much self-sufficient, what you would call. We have grown our fruits, vegetables, raised all livestock, which at the time I didn't really realize how fortunate I was. We were growing organically, and among many of my earliest memories are when I went to our polytunnel and we were growing tomatoes, cucumbers, all other things, and making our own wine. Later on, we moved to a town where life was slightly different. Following my secondary education, I went to a university and studied horticultural sciences, as Jason mentioned before, and I graduated as a horticulture engineer. I have over 17 years of experience by now. I created and maintained countless gardens. I worked 2 separate stately homes. I created a number of private gardens. I consulted, advised on certain things. I also looked after school grounds and gardens. And next slide. So I chose this quotation because I think it is very important and it's very meaningful, and it just says that we cannot solve problems with the same way of thinking, and there are certain problems which need to be solved right now, or at least has to be talked about and start working towards. So first of all, I would like to talk a bit about soil, because maybe some of you don't know much about, or it's something new. So generally, as you see it on the screen, it's about 45% sand, slate, and clay as it builds up. There is 25%, approximately 25% of air, which play quite a significant part of it. And also there is 25% water and about 5% organic matter, which build up 50 to 80% humus, 25% actively decomposing materials, around 10% dead, and 5% living organism, which I would say it's very significant because, as you see, in a teaspoon of soil contain more than upwards 50 billion microbes, which is in comparison that there is 7.3 billion human on Earth. It's quite a big number. I think we are still learning quite a lot about these microbes, organisms, and how they actually working in conjunction with the plants and how they have plants and the soil being productive. I think very important to mention in this 25% air it's a big part of the carbon which gets sequestered from air through photosynthesis and through the plants. So the next slides about it just shows, it just give a general information about that we have about 750 billion tons of carbon in atmosphere, and you see in the biosphere about 550 billions, and in the pedosphere is about 2,300 billion tons of carbon. And on the other corner there is this information about that since pardon me, since mankind started farming 12,000 years ago, we released about 133 billion tons of carbons, which mainly went up to the atmosphere, and that caused climate change. It is scientifically proven that it has an effect on our atmosphere, on our way of living. But as you see, there is plenty of space in the ground where actually this carbon could be stored through growing plants, covering ground more widely than as it's happening now, and it could happen in a better way. So this next slide is it's a bit of a comparison about net carbon loss and the net carbon gain. So on the left-hand side, we got this bare ground where pretty much all the carbon goes back to the atmosphere because there is nothing really to hold it down, and there is the plants are not there. And that's a significant problem because these continuously go back and warming up in the atmosphere, causing all these glasshouse effects. On the right-hand side, as you see, where we got greenery, which covers the ground nicely, there are more carbon. It's not carbon gain. This carbon goes into the ground through the plants where it's used and enrich the ground. There is some loss eventually, and obviously, but the gain elements is much bigger, which is very important. The next slide is about desertification and the loss of soil. As you can see it on the top, United Nations reported that we have about 60 harvests left, which I would say is quite alarming, considering that we are 2021, and that would mean even before the end of the century, all our land became unusable, if I may use the word. Also, you could see that in England and Wales, we lose about 2.9 million tons of topsoil to erosion, which costs about 177 million pounds a year. So soil erosion is a big problem, and everything linked back to carbon and how much plants we have, because plants help to keep the water, help with the permeability of the soil. With erosion, all the soil runoff into our rivers lower became desertified, a lot of land. Also, another problem, by using the chemicals and fertilizers, as the runoff water would take those ones as well and move them to in the water courses, and ultimately it ended up in our drinking water, which I think it's a significant problem. The next slide is about a bit of the traditional, if I may call it, traditional, currently used agricultural and horticultural techniques in comparison with the regenerative techniques. So on the left side, we can see traditional practice where the soil is bare. I've used bare soil because there is a significant part of the year when actually the soil is bare. And even on this photograph I took from the internet, you can see that there is quite a bit of space between the rows as the way how it's cultivated. So on these bare soil, the carbon can go back to the air, and that's reduce how much the plants can use. On the other hand, we got the regenerative practice where we got the cover crops pretty much all year around. So the ideas behind that, there is something grown all the time, even if it's a cover crop just for the sake of having it, to be able to enrich the ground and make it more usable and better. Also, where the bare soil is, the water holding capacity is reduced, which cause drought. So as would say, the drought is the result of a broken soil, and the soil became broken or became broken the way how we are cultivating it. And that leads me to the tilling techniques as used now. The problem is not with the tilling. The problem is that is the overuse, the way how is overused and left over the winter period or the period when nothing is grown, opposed to the regenerative way where you don't no tilling. It's a different way of just slicing up the ground, placing the seeds in or the seedlings and close it in straight away. Also, it became very popular lately, the Nordic gardening, where you just place quite a significant amount of organic matters on the ground, and you just let it to rot down. And in this way, you are protecting the ground. Also, you are enriching the grounds, and all the nutrition can go in. Another big issue or problem, if I can say, is the use of chemicals, which generally speaking, any chemicals. The idea of destroying the ground or killing anything on the ground to be able to grow, it's a bit contradictory in my view. Also, the chemicals has a detrimental effect on the microbes and microorganisms in the ground, which again is just lead to the negative effect and how we can grow stuff. And again, these chemicals with the runoff waters can get into the water courses and through into the water what we drink and into our body, which again scientifically proven that it is possible. In regenerative practices, there is a reduced use of chemicals, or I would say more like an organic way of using different type of oil, like neem oil, is used to treat plants or protect them. The other big thing I would like to talk about is the use of fertilizer. I think plants became addicted to fertilizer in a way of how we are using them. And also, it's like a catch-21. We're using fertilizers to produce more plants. And by producing more plants, the plants take more nutrition out of the ground. Therefore, we have to put more fertilizer down into the ground to be able to cater for what we grow. I have an interesting story about this. When I was at university that time, our lecturer was talking about MGOs and different way of growing, and his view was that there are certain things have to be able to feed the population. I think that's very much changed, and the view how people look at it. And I think there is a need and interest in organically grown vegetables and fruits. And there is a possibility of growing them. Have to change the way how we look at things. We have to change our practices, but there is definitely a way of doing it. So in regenerative practices, we use organic fertilizer, mainly contain compost, or also seaweed liquidized fertilizer, which can be made out of comfrey, for example. I think again these became very popular organic vegetables and other produces. The next slide it's about how much fertilizer used per hectare of cropland in 2015. It's an interesting one. It just really highlights that is how much there is in worldwide used in average, and how much is used in the United Kingdom. I think we are pretty much in the mid-region, which is fine, but I think there is still a place to improve and trying to reduce over the time the amount of fertilizers we use. The next slide is about livestock, how to raise livestock and how it currently raised, and how could be also raised in a different way. So at present moment, in these intensive farming, animals, as you can read, they are pretty much kept in confined and overcrowded condition. I think it's nothing new about it. We knew about it, and they talk a lot in media and different platforms about that. This is not the best practice for the animal, neither for the ground. Also, the use of antibiotics, which nowadays become as a tool for prevention rather than treating the disease, which again I think is not the best practice in my view. And also what we raise, that we eat. So on the opposite side, there is this holistic grazing. There is a number of different regenerative keeping of animals, stock keeping. I choose the holistic grazing where the plant is the matters. So all these grazing and moving animals around in rotation is all about taking in consideration the life cycle of the plants. So we can see moved animals and the plants, the grass or any plants have time to recover. And also it is good for the ground as well, good for the plants, and it's good for the animals after we consume. So the next slide is about forest management. Again, there is quite a lot of talk about forest management and how much land is deforested and how much trees are gone and taken. I think we are very much at the pivot point where we have to think about, because the trees play a significant part in the fight against climate change and about mitigation of the climate change effects, such as floods and carbon sequestration, and just simply biodiversity enhancement, reduction of biodiversity. And also what is very important is what type of trees we plant, because more and more often trees are planted which grow very quickly, so they can be used again into papers and different materials. So I think we should look into and plant native trees to the land, which have quite a long life cycle, so they can take as much as carbon as possible through their life cycle. The next slide is about amenity and historical landscapes. Amenities such as football fields or sports grounds, also private gardens. The reason I choose to talk about, because many of them has quite a high usage. Sport fields, grounds get compacted, it's used, a lot of fertilizer are used to ensure the quality of the ground. What I think is very important is there is this trading point where how much we look after and the quality what we want to ensure. But I think it's also important to do our practices in a way of using as much as regenerative practices such as aeration, using organic fertilizer, trying to cut the grass less out of season. And this something definitely could be done in a more private garden. I would go as far as that perhaps trying to create wildflower meadows, trying to create wildflower areas where not necessarily have to be manicured, and that could help with the sequestration, could help with the ground's water holding capability, permeability, also definitely enhance the biodiversity. Historical landscapes are very important and have a long history and a lot of tradition, and they definitely get a lot of visitors. Again, this could have and has a detrimental effect on the quality of the soil and the ground. It gets compacted. Eventually, the grass has to be cut more often. I think it would be important to look at how was the future, how we look at these places and how we manage them. The top picture is Chatsworth, if somebody doesn't know, and the left corner, right corner to me, it's a picture from Regent's Park. The reason I put these pictures both because these are carpet bedding or bedding, both can be called. So these are really nice. Having said that, they put a lot of strain on the ground because the grounds have to be continuously maintained, digged over twice. The bedding plants have to be changed once, twice, possibly 3 times a year. So I think we have to think about how we go forward. And I will talk about what the road I choose at my workplace. But I think in my view, it should be a combination of perennials with mixed with bedding plants, so we can maximize the cover crop, I may say that. So everything is covered all year around, and that would definitely have, and we would have to use less fertilizer. Also, it's better for the soil structure, which again get damaged by the lot of digging, forking, overturning. Watering is very important. It's everything needs to be watered. By reducing the water holding capacity of the ground, we have to use more water. So I think the aim, in my view, is trying to regenerate, trying to restore, and look at different ways. The next picture is about urban and community gardens, which plays a very significant part, in my view, in urban settings, especially in urban settings. And there's a long history and tradition of allotments here in the United Kingdom. But I think now these places become in urban setting very frequent and important, and the way how people socialize, especially during the this COVID pandemic worldwide, that creates a place for people where they can go, they can grow stuff, they can socialize with other people. It's good for the well-being, mental, physical well-being. And also it gives us a sort of connection back to nature. Also the places, these, as you can see on the right-hand side picture, there is concrete, bricks everywhere. And these urban gardens, community gardens, help to revive, to give back something to nature and create a space where the grounds can get renewed, and the carbon can sequester and just enhanced. Also, education is very important, and these places are great places to educate people about how things can be grown organically, and what's the difference between them when it's something mass-produced or grown organically. So the next few slides is about our work and aims and practices at Queen Mary University, where I'm currently working. So the first picture is about our first wildflower meadow. This area is about 250 square meters. So this is the first stage, of a long project, which we aim by the end around 60-70% of all own existing lawns area turned into wildflower meadows. This wildflower was laid back in November 2020. In addition, we planted around 3,000 flower bulbs beneath. It has 10 different type of wildflowers, and it came in a form of turf. So it's right now is the perfect time to see how it started developing, and we're trying to set up research activities with our academics to see how much carbon could be sequenced, how it could affect biodiversity, hopefully on a very positive way. And hopefully we can extend these projects and see how much we can improve the biodiversity and everything in this urban setting. So the next picture is about our community orchard and soft fruit garden. So the idea came to me last summer. I was walking around the campus and I was thinking how nice it would be if you have an orchard. So I took it forward and we planted 30 apple and 30 pear trees last September. These trees are 2 to 3 years old. So there is another 2 years before they really fully grown and fully start producing fruit. So at this stage, we are doing the formative prunings and see how they will develop. So these trees are planted in our students' village. The idea is that showing to students or visitors or local community or anybody visiting us how things can be done and just have a connection with nature. And again, I'm setting up workshops around fruit tree pruning, maintenance, hopefully harvesting, and we can see how the fruits can be used going forward. In addition to the trees, we also planted over 100 raspberries and gooseberries, which again will create a nice soft fruit garden and enhance biodiversity, and also will produce plenty of fruit as we go forward. The next picture is our community allotment, the pictures about our community allotment project, which is the extension of the existing allotment. So on the top left corner is the existing area which was built 5 years ago, raised beds, very nicely done, and it was used less frequently last year eventually because of the social distancing and COVID and so on and so forth. But I thought that it would be good to extend this and trying to encourage students to participate more, because this existing one was working on a base of had to sign up. There was a certain amount of space. So I thought that would be nice to create something where people can just have drop-in sessions. So this is what we are working currently on, and from April we will have drop-in session probably once or twice a week for a few hours when anybody can come along, help us with planting, just talking about plants, or they have any question, they can start building a good, interesting, healthy relationship with nature. Also can see how things can be grown organically. So the picture at the bottom, which we built, or new raised beds, are in our students' village. We used recycled pellets. So they are 99% of are recycled, sustainable. We don't use any chemicals or fertilizer. We are composting currently, but our compost will be ready probably end of this year or beginning of next year. So I would say that anything we grow is as organic as it could be. We are growing our plants, vegetables from seed. We have over 1,000 lettuces, rockets, and other seedlings, which will be all used, planted out, and eaten. We are also growing a wide range of other plants: tomatoes, chilies, runner beans, beetroot, radishes, quite anything you would imagine. Again, the whole idea is about creating activities and educate, which Jason mentioned that I'm very fond of it, to educating people about and showing them the difference between, so offering them the choice to choose, and hopefully they choose the right way. The next picture about this initiative, one of the students came up with or highlighted to me. So there is this the British Hedgehog Association have this program of hedgehog friendly campus. So we started working to create, to be part of it, and we got the bronze award beginning of this year. So in part of this bronze award, we created this pile of logs, which could function as a hiding place for hedgehog, could function as bug hotels. Also, we created more formal hedgehog houses, which are placed on around campus. At the moment, unfortunately, we don't have hedgehog yet, but I think it's all about looking at things differently and creating the possibilities and opportunities to have something different. And I think that's very important, as I see it. So currently we are working towards the silver phase, which and the deadline is end of this year. So we will have a number of interesting activities for students and staff and anybody who wants to join us. And finally, thank you very much for your attention. And if there is any question, I'm more than happy to answer.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dimi, for that eye-opening presentation on some of the environmental and sustainability challenges. Now we've got time for questions. So if anybody's got questions they want to ask to Dimi, then please pop them in the chat or make yourself known on the by raising your hand. Ellen asks, to get us started, how are these projects on campus? How are they funded, Dimi?
So the white flowers, it was funded through or budgets, or we are part of estate and facilities, and it was funded through or budgeting. So that's the straight answer. We also applied for a government grant recently, which is advertised and will be given if you are successful by the environmental agency. It's called Natural Enhancement Readiness Fund. So if we got the grant, we carry on with to extending our projects through that fund. Otherwise, we allocate money. Well,
but you've got to lobby the people in management to, you know, to
yes,
decide that budget for these types of.
Yes, exactly. I have to say that I'm very lucky because the management, especially the senior management, is very supportive about sustainability, and so I could get everybody on board with my ideas so far, and we are on the same page and we have the same understanding. And the most important is all these projects are acting as like a tool as well. So it's not just for, it's for the nature beauty, but they can also be part of a countless research project, which is also equally important.
So Ellen asks further on this theme about the community orchards and the allotments. You know, is this predominantly students that are using these amenities, and what sort of students are they? You know, are they studying you know, natural sciences or biology, or do they come from all sorts of disciplines?
Right. So yes, I have to say that when we planted the orchard, that was a very interesting thing, because it was just before students went back home in November. So we did a quick advertising, and 20 students turned up from all sorts of background. Some of them were studying engineering, some of them studying law, medicine, and it's the same as with the allotment area. Students are coming. I have students who study medicine, another one is studying law. So it's very varied. I think the most important is that all of them has the interest in nature, and they want things better. They want to learn. I think that's very important.
Excellent. Jeff asks, what compost and growing media are you using?
So we are using a multi-purpose compost So in these raised beds, the new raised bed, the existing one, there is some sort of soil, I would say. I'm not 100% sure. It definitely never been any fertilizer in it, that's for sure. But the new one, we are using multi-purpose compost mixed with loam-based soil.
Right. Robert's got a question. Robert, would you like to unmute yourself and put your question to Dimi?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, hi, Dimitrisz.
Hello, Robert.
Yeah, as yourself, I'm a member of PGG, albeit a retired one. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. I enjoyed that. I've got a question. I live in Scotland, and I have access to an iPhone app where I can measure soil, organic matter, and carbon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this comes from the Hutton Institute in Dundee and Aberdeen, but it doesn't work in England or Northern Ireland or Wales. It's not licensed there. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that people can use in those countries in a similar way? It's really easy. You just use an iPhone and you photograph the soil at a certain depth, and you get the percent carbon and the organic matter. Is there anything around in England?
I will be honest with you, I don't think so. I mean, the way how I look at it, or maybe there is, maybe I just never came across the way. What we are trying to do is to set up proper measuring equipment with a different academics, and then get the information through that. But it certainly must be a good app.
Yeah, I think it's fairly accurate, and it just seems so easy.
Yes.
And I just can't understand why there's nothing else available in the UK.
Unfortunately, I don't know how it, when it comes to it, but I personally very much look forward when we can set up things.
Thank you. Could I ask another question?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, thanks. You spoke a lot about agriculture and farming. Now, this is changing in different ways in the different UK countries, isn't it? Certainly in England, it is very different to what's going to be happening maybe more slowly in Scotland. Now, as gardeners, is there any way that we can use some of our organic gardening methods to have some sort of influence on agriculture? I
think that's exactly the way how I try to do it right now. I think the more we talk about and can show people that things can be done differently, I think that yes, we can. Is the way, if we practice it ourselves, I think, and we can prove it to them that this should be and can be done differently. I think this is, the more we talk about, the more we highlight the issue and how it can be changed in a sensible way. And I think then people can be brought on board, and they understand that how it's beneficial for them as well, having more crop and making more money out of it.
Yeah. I was just thinking there because in the last gardening job I worked in, it was on a big estate in Fife, and we many gardeners, particularly in the PGG, work on estates. Now, if you can work in conjunction with the farming side of the estate, like we did trials on different vegetables on the farmland, and the gardeners were having a good influence there, and then the farming community sort of took up some of the trials. So I think there are areas where we can have some influence. It's just a point.
No, definitely I agree with you. It's just as I said, it's making connection with the farmers and talking about and helping them to understand why is it important. Yeah,
because the impression I get at the moment is that farming maybe certainly in Scotland a little bit of reluctant to go to this new form of farming. They're very nervous. Maybe you could expect it. You know, they're asking to grow crops to make money, but also look after the environment, and it's a little bit scary for some of them.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely understand. Probably I would feel the same way. What my point is, and the way how I try to look at it is that things has been grown for hundreds of years on a way what we are talking about as a new way before the industrial revolution, and people were still growing stuff. They are still feeding people. So I think it can be done. It's just very much how we portray it, and education again. It's just very important to show them that actually, yes, they can make profit in the same way.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dimitrisz.
Thank you, Robert.
Brilliant. Thank you, Robert. Raffaella asks a question about your wildflower meadow. You said that you had bulbs planted underneath. Just ask a little bit about the process. I mean, was that planting the bulbs before the turf was laid, or did you plant the bulbs?
So we removed the existing grass which was there, which was some in very poor state. So we used a turf cutter. We removed it. We just gently make loose the soil just to see to remove any roots or anything which would have been very thick. And then we just dig the holes for the bulbs. We use the crowbar. I learned from somebody else, it's not my invention, but when it comes to planting a lot of bulbs, if you use a big crowbar, then one person can make the hole, the other person can place it in the hole, the bulbs, and just close it. It's much faster and better for the hand than trying with small trowels. So then we lay the turf and just water it a bit, and that's it.
Excellent. I think it was Claire was asking about rainwater harvesting. You know, you've got a lot of buildings on campus. Is there any plans to harvest rainwater allotments?
Excellent question. There is currently a master plan is developed, which is about the next 10, 15, 20 years. And as part of it, we are looking underground rainwater harvesting. So it's just the system has to be built. At the moment, there isn't really for the system. I did raise the question myself, how nice would it be? And yes, there is a provision of installing tanks and using more rainwater.
Okay, let me find another one. There's one here about grassland quality in Brighton. I don't know if the poser of that question would like to ask it themselves. You might do a better job of it than I would. No. It's basically about how to re-establish the quality of the grassland. Is the only way to rejuvenate them is to close them off and remove them from sort of public use. Does that fit with your experience, Dimi?
I think it should be a trade point between, and I wouldn't suggest that all the land should be removed, but in a way of 50% removed, trying to rewiden it and see how it works, and if it does work, then find a way out. So I think there is still plenty of land which can be used and can be accessible for public. But in the same time, I think it's time to a lot of land which is not used, trying to regenerate it.
Yeah, there's a public benefit trade-off.
Yes.
Barty, I see you've got your hand up. Would you like to put a question?
Oh, yes, just looking at Google Earth, I see you're next to Mile End Park with Victoria Park at the top and lots of green spaces. Are you part of the sort of active part of the sort of wildlife corridors in the area, and do you participate? I was thinking of your hedgehogs and things like that.
Yes. So currently there is nothing really, because we got the canal between us and the Mile End Park, which makes it a bit difficult at the moment. And also, if you're familiar with it, it's very built up area. But again, going forward, yes, there is provision of creating wildlife corridors. And if you get this fund, this grant, many of our activities will be around trying to create these type of corridors and finding a way how we are going to create these corridors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's some money to be spent on hedgehog swimming lessons or a hedgehog ferry, I think.
Or a tunnel or the bridge.
Or a tunnel, right.
The bridge.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dimi. Any further questions to come from the chat or anybody else? No? Well, in that case, I'll just like to share with you a couple of upcoming events. Just turn your share off, Dimi. So you can see that. So we're having a little break for Easter now in the series, but we'll be joined again on Wednesday, the 14th of April by Sam Jones, talking about pheromones and their use in IPM in horticulture and in gardens. So please do join us for that. And then later that week, we'll be joined by Matthew Appleby from Horticulture Week, who'll be giving the James Bruce Memorial Lecture on what's facing horticulture in 2021 and beyond. Brilliant. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much to Dimi for giving your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for joining us, and I hope you can join us again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.